I will never pick up a hitchhiker again. This happened about 5 years ago, so please be patient with me as I may not remember every detail or moment exactly correct. That being said, this whole experience is burned pretty intensely into my mind, so I remember about 90% of it pretty well. Now, I'm a 26-year-old man, making me about 21 years old when this event occurred. I live in southern Ohio, about 45 minutes away from Cincinnati. I went to a smaller college in the area, and I was pretty isolated from most of my friends and family during the week. My friends all went to their various choices of college throughout the Midwest, and my family remained in my hometown. I ended up at a school alone because I had a rather specific major, and this was one of the few colleges in the country that would accommodate me. Luckily, my girlfriend went to college fairly close to me, so I would often find myself making 2 to 3 trips a week to see her and study with her. On most weekends, I would go on road trips to visit my friends, considering their campuses were a lot bigger and more fun than my small town college. During this particular weekend in question, I was getting ready to make about a 2-hour trip to see my friend Kyle at his school, the name of which I probably should not disclose, So, I had made the same trip about 30 times before, so I knew the route pretty well at this point, and didn't even have to use GPS to get out there. Eventually, I left on Friday afternoon, once I was done with classes for the day, and I was set to arrive at Kyle's dorm at about 8 o'clock p.m., right on time to go out for a night of binge drinking and eating garbage food. The joys of college. So, I set off at about 5:50 and was roughly 15 minutes into my trip when my girlfriend called me. This was pretty unusual, considering I had already told her I was driving to Kyle's. So, I answered quickly, thinking something must have been wrong, She was working that night, and our car had broken down in her dorm room parking lot when she was leaving to go work her shift. She figured I wasn't too far into my drive, and wanted to know if I can give her a quick ride to work before I got too far away. Me, being the dutiful boyfriend that I was, agreed to come get her since I was only about 20 minutes from her location. I was pretty far off campus, so I pulled over my car on the highway and used GPS to see if there was a faster route to her from where I was. The map on my phone revealed that there was an exit coming up that would take me to a side street that I could use to get to her fairly quickly. So, I texted her that I was on my way and set off towards my new destination. I had seen the exit in question plenty of times before, but I never had any reason of my own to get off onto it. So once I exited the highway, my surroundings were completely unfamiliar to me. The exit took me off onto a road that had dense woods on the right side and the highway on the left side. My phone informed me that my next turn wasn't for about 5 miles, so I had a ways to go until I had to do any navigating. About a half mile later, the road had turned, and there were now trees on either side of me, and to be honest now, it was a really beautiful sight. It was October time, so the surrounding woods were a mixture of various warm colors, and I was actually really enjoying my little detour. The entire area was wooded on either side, with only the occasional break in tree line for a driveway and a mailbox to poke out of. The houses were hard to see through the trees, but from the few glimpses I did manage to get of them, the houses themselves were pretty nice as well. It was getting a little dark, and I had about a mile to go before I had to turn when I noticed a Toyota with a hood popped open further down the road. Now, as I approached, I noticed a man in a shirt and tie with his head under the hood, seemingly with a broke-down car. Now, there was no traffic to be seen behind me, so I stopped for a moment to ask him if everything was okay, and if he needed to borrow my phone or anything like that could help him get out of the situation. He didn't seem to hear me at first, So a little louder this time, I said, "Everything okay?" This time, he seemed to have heard me, and thus he lifted his head up away from the engine and looked up at me. Now, he seemed like a completely normal-looking guy, and he had a normal face to match, to be honest. There was nothing really wrong with him. The best way I could describe him is just pedestrian-looking. He had short brown hair, brown eyes, and a 5 o'clock shadow. He smiled at me and said he was on his way home from work, and that something had gone wrong with his engine. Again, I offered him my phone in case he wanted to call anyone to get picked up or to get the car towed. He replied, "Oh no, that's okay. I have a car service that'll come get my car for me. They're closed until tomorrow morning though, so I hate to ask, but could you possibly give me a ride to my brother's house? He lives only like 4 minutes away from here." This absolutely should have been a red flag for me. I think I was a little stunned by how normal this guy seemed, considering most hitchhikers on TV are crazy or axe murderers. Why couldn't he have used my cell phone to call his brother? Why couldn't have he called his brother? I guess I wasn't thinking clearly at the time, but in hindsight is always 20/20, and I'm well aware I made a bad decision that night. I was physically much bigger than him, and he was driving a nice car, so I figured he wasn't a weird or local crazy person, and that I could overpower him if need be, so I agreed to give him a quick ride to his brother's house, since it was on the way to my girlfriend's, who would later be livid with me for taking so much time to get her to work, but that's a story for a different time. So I unlocked the car for him to get in, and he pointed me in the direction of his brother's house, and we set off on our way. Things were pretty normal for a few minutes, and I was starting to feel like maybe I did the right thing. Then, things start to get weirder. The first thing that made me uncomfortable was the way he acted every time there was a swear word in the music I was listening to. He was almost flinching every time 50 Cent said fuck or bitch, and I picked up on it pretty quickly, so I changed the song, thinking that he was just really against swearing or something like that. After a minute after I changed the song, there was no swearing in this song. He reached up and slammed his hand on the radio power button and turned it off. It wasn't crazy hard or anything like that, but it was definitely enough to get me to notice it. I tried to make light of the situation and said, "Not your style?" This question was met with complete silence. At this point, I was ready for this guy to get out of my car, so I asked, how much further do we have to go? I have to be somewhere soon and I can't be late." He said he had about 4 minutes to go, which immediately sent up warning signals in my head, considering he had told me the same thing about 8 minutes ago. I decided that was enough. I didn't think he was dangerous or anything like that, but I figured, since our destination was further than he was letting on, and he was lying, so that I would take him despite the distance. It was getting late and I wasn't trying to face my girlfriend's wrath, so I told him, to be honest, this was as far as I could go, and he'd have to walk the rest of the way. His mood changed immediately, but instead of getting angry, which I was completely expecting, he became panicky and was practically begging me to take him the rest of the way. His overreaction set off pretty much every alarm I had in my head, so I told him to remove himself from my car before I had to remove him myself. It was then he pulled out his rather oversized wallet and offered to pay me to take him the rest of the way. He tried to pull on a stack of $20 bills, but as he removed them from his wallet, something else fell out of his pocket wallet onto the seat next to him. It was only for a split second before he grabbed it and shoved it back into his pocket, but I got a good enough look at it for it to haunt me to this day. Along with the money, a small Ziploc bag full of what I'm confident were adult teeth fell out of his wallet. Front teeth, molars, you name it. Everyone I told this story to has been skeptical of this part, but I'm confident that is what I saw. I freaked out worse than I ever had and screamed at him to get out of my car, and he got out immediately and was looking at me with surprised eyes on the side of the road. I took off and called the police, who simply told me to not pick up hitchhikers ever again, and that they couldn't do anything since the man didn't commit any crimes. I don't know where he was going or what he was doing, and I'm pretty sure I don't want to know. I do know, however, that he seemed to have all of his teeth still in his mouth. I don't know whose teeth those were or why he had them with him, but creepy teeth hitchhiker, let's never meet again. Pretty sure I was almost carjacked. I was on my way to an event in a town I'd never been to. It is a smaller town, and I had almost no cell reception, so my GPS was cutting in and out. I ended up taking a wrong turn that led me down a one-way dirt road. It honestly felt like it went on forever, but in reality was only about 5 miles long. I took the first turn I saw to turn myself around to make it back to the main road. This took me into what looked like the remains of a small trailer park. There was abandoned trailers, houses that were caved in, and houses half burnt down. I was not in a hurry to check things out. I rounded a corner to turn around, stop behind a car at a stop sign. The house next to the stop sign had 2 men sitting on the porch, but I didn't want to make eye contact or talk to them in any way. Now, out of the corner of my eye, I saw one of them stand up and make his way towards my car. At this point, I had moved up to the stop sign and was about to accelerate when I see him begin to run and reach out for the handle of my passenger side door. I slammed on the gas as right as he put his hand on the door. I peeled out of there without looking back. So, to the guy who either tried to carjack me, kidnap me, or just scare the friggin' shit out of me, please let's not meet. I don't trust Uber anymore. This happened about a year ago. I was visiting friends in the city, about an hour train ride from where I lived. It was getting late out, and the last train was going to leave in less than an hour. My friends lived about 10 minutes away from the train station, by car, so I let them know I need a ride soon. My friend who offered to drive me earlier that day was too drunk, so he ordered an Uber to come get me. Normally I would just stay the night, but I was pregnant in my first trimester, and I just need the comfort of my boyfriend's bed. We had some time, so as he's ordering the first one, he sees the picture of the driver and cancels it because the man looked creepy. The second one didn't look much better, at least he seemed less creepy than the first. The irony is ridiculous, you know. He arrives shortly after. I get inside the car, and he says my friend's name, who is a man, and I tell him he just paid for it, that he has the right person. He asks my name and if my friend is my boyfriend. I tell him my first name and that no, my friend isn't my boyfriend. He compliments me, and I thank him, and try to put in a headphone, but he continues to talk to me about how I deserve a boyfriend, or something along those lines. Now, I must say I know the city very, very well. I've lived there before, and I actually spent a lot of my time there, you know? I know exactly how to get to the train station, and I always know the best route based on the time. It's pretty late on a weekday, so there wasn't any traffic, and pretty much any way he took in the right direction would end up getting me there. He puts the directions in his GPS that propped up on his dash. It tells him to make a left at the next street, which is what you'd have to do to get there since it is a dead end. We start moving, and he suddenly asks if cops hang out here. Now at this point, I feel uncomfortable, but I figured he just wants to speed a little, so I say, not really. And he suddenly takes a right into a narrow alley before the left ahead. His GPS is telling him to turn around, but he's still heading in the opposite direction, so I tell him that this isn't the right way, and he suddenly starts listening to his GPS like it was just a mistake. So he says, I'll get you there if you don't mind me speeding. I'm thinking, what the fuck ever, just get to my train. So I say, sure. And he immediately slams his foot on the pedal and reaches 50 to 60 miles per hour before slamming on his brakes at the stop sign ahead. It is the residential part of the city, so the speed limit wouldn't have been anything over 25 miles per hour, with stop signs every single block. He continues to do this while following the directions for 2 blocks, when he blatantly ignores the GPS and starts to head in the opposite direction once again. At this point, I'm fully aware he doesn't intend to take me to my train, and I'm texting my friends, telling them of this whole situation, kind of trying to keep calm, but inside, a little bit panicky. They tell me to come back. It had almost been 10 minutes, and we had just gone in circles and circles, but I'm in desperate need of my comfort, so I try again and say, I'm gonna be late for the train, this isn't the right way. He tells me I won't be late for my train, even though he has no friggin' idea what time my train is even coming. We go through a light, and there's a new Camaro behind us, riding his ass, because that's just how people drive around here. And he starts asking why the cops are following him. I didn't say anything, but he keeps asking me and gets louder and louder every time I don't answer, in between him mumbling to himself. Eventually, this cop car turns, he calms down, and I notice the time. 15 minutes passed at this point, and I wasn't even a mile away from my friend's house, and I'm definitely not going to make this train. I tell him to take me back, but he insists that I'll make my train. I was fed up and got pissy with him about the time, and told him he had to take me back. He finally obliged after all this talking and arguing, but only after slowing down, almost coming to a complete stop in an intersection next to a bus stop where a girl was standing by herself. He probably noticed my phone buzzing and lighting up, so he finally calmly took me back down the street to my friend's house. My friends were standing at the door when I got out of the car, so I walked up to the door, and when I looked back to see him, stopped in his car down the street, talking to a hooded person standing on the sidewalk. My guess is he probably thought that I was a tourist. I mean, I had a giant backpack and a little bag with me from the night before, and he could take advantage of me, so I reported it to Uber and the local Uber drivers page in the city, hoping this will never happen to anyone again.